The crimson warning lights bathed the Galactic Council chambers in an ominous glow as the emergency beacon's shrill cry echoed through the vast crystalline hall. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy shifted nervously in their seats, their various forms casting strange shadows on the polished floor. The sudden silence that followed was more terrifying than any sound. Ambassador Velthar materialized at the center podium through the transport beam, his elegant form immediately catching everyone's attention. The Zephyrian's normally radiant blue skin had turned an ashen gray, and his 3 delicate arms trembled as he struggled to maintain composure. His large, opalescent eyes darted around the chamber, reflecting a terror so profound that even the most hardened warriors among the delegates felt their confidence waver. "Esteemed council members," Velthar began, his melodic voice cracking like breaking glass, "I bring news that will shake the foundations of our reality. The ancient enemy has returned. The Devourers walk among the stars once more." A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The Krillian ambassadors' chitinous plates clattered against each other in distress. The floating ethereal representatives dimmed their bioluminescent displays in what could only be described as cosmic grief. Even the mighty Thorian war chiefs, beings who had never known fear in 1,000 battles, gripped their ceremonial weapons with white knuckles. 3 days ago, Velthar continued, his voice growing steadier as he focused on the terrible task. At hand, we lost contact with our colony on Zenithar Prime. Not unusual, we thought. Perhaps a solar storm or equipment failure. But when our patrol ships arrived to investigate, they found something that defies all natural law. The holographic projector hummed to life, filling the center of the chamber with a 3-dimensional map of the Zenithar system. What appeared before them made several delegates physically recoil in horror. Where the lush green world of Zenithar Prime should have orbited its gentle yellow star, there was nothing but twisted space that hurt to look at directly. The very fabric of reality appeared torn, with edges that folded back on themselves in impossible ways. "The planet wasn't destroyed," Velthar whispered, his voice barely audible above the chamber's ventilation systems. "It was unmade, erased from existence so completely that even the memory of its gravity well has vanished. The star doesn't even wobble from its missing mass." Delegate Krixtal, the insectoid representative from the hive worlds, clicked her mandibles nervously. "Surely this is some natural phenomenon, perhaps a black hole or dimensional anomaly." Velthar's bitter laugh echoed through the chamber. "That's what we hoped. We sent the Third Fleet to investigate, commanded by Admiral Zelmoth aboard the dreadnought Starfire. 50 ships, our finest crews, equipped with weapons that could crack moons in half." He paused, his breathing becoming labored. "They encountered the Devourers at the edge of the system." The hologram shifted, showing the twisted remains of massive warships floating in space like broken toys. But even the wreckage seemed wrong somehow, as if it existed in too many dimensions at once. Our plasma cannons passed through them like they were made of nothing. Our quantum missiles simply ceased to exist the moment they made contact. Even our AI systems began shutting down, displaying error messages we'd never seen before. The last transmission from Admiral Zelmoth was just screaming, followed by static that somehow conveyed pure terror. Council leader Mordun, the ancient, four-eyed being who had guided the Galactic Council for over 3 centuries, leaned forward on his crystalline throne. His voice carried the weight of eons when he spoke. How many ships returned? None. The word fell like a death sentence. 50 of our finest vessels, 12,000 of our bravest souls, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged. Vanished, as if they had never existed at all. The chamber erupted in panicked chatter as delegates began speaking in dozens of different languages simultaneously. Some were already calculating evacuation routes for their homeworlds. Others were demanding immediate military action. The Vorthan representative was openly weeping, his crystalline tears creating small puddles on the floor. Silence. Morden's voice boomed, enhanced by the chamber's acoustics. "Ambassador Velthar, what exactly do you request of this council?" Velthar straightened, drawing on reserves of courage he didn't know he possessed. "We need help, any help. The Zephyrian Republic offers our most classified technologies, our sacred crystal matrices, even the location of our hidden treasure. Worlds. We'll give anything, everything to stop these entities before they reach the core systems. The silence that followed was deafening. Every species in the galaxy had legends about the Devourers, ancient nightmares that supposedly existed, before reality itself had fully formed. Most had dismissed them as primitive mythology. Now faced with the evidence, the greatest minds in the galaxy found themselves speechless. That's when Admiral Kim of the Terran delegation rose from his seat. The human was unremarkable compared to the exotic aliens surrounding him. Average. Height, graying hair, wearing a simple blue uniform without excessive decoration. But something in his weathered face commanded attention. He moved with the confidence of someone who had seen the worst the universe could offer and survived. Without ceremony, he activated his wrist communicator. The device crackled with static as it connected across the vast distance to Earth. Terra Command, this is Admiral Kim. We have a Devourer situation in the Outer Rim. Deploy Ghost Protocol immediately. Authorization code, Broken Arrow. The response came after a moment of static that seemed to stretch forever. Confirmed, Admiral. Ghost Protocol authorized. Kill Team Alpha is being prepped for deployment. ETA 72 hours to target zone. Velthar's relief was so intense that his skin began returning to its natural blue hue. Admiral Kim, how many ships will Terra be sending? How many soldiers? We can provide star charts, supply lines, whatever your fleet requires. Kim's smile was thin and cold, like the edge of a blade. No fleet, Ambassador, just 12 humans and 1 ship. The chamber exploded in outrage. The Thorian war chief stood up, his massive frame intimidating even at a distance. 12 soldiers against entities that destroyed 50 warships? This is madness. Have you lost your mind, human? Screeched the avian delegate, her feathers bristling with indignation. This threat requires the combined might of every fleet in the galaxy. Kim remained calm, his expression unchanged. 12 of our people will be enough. Velthar's hope began to waver. Admiral, with all due respect to human courage, surely you understand the scale of this threat. These aren't ordinary enemies. They exist outside our understanding of physics itself. I know exactly what they are, Kim replied, his voice carrying an edge that made several delegates step back. And I know exactly what kind of humans we're sending to deal with them. The security clearance required to enter Sector 7 of Luna Station was so classified that most government officials didn't even know it existed. Behind blast doors thick enough to withstand a nuclear strike, the shuttle bay hummed with quiet efficiency. The air itself felt different here, charged with an energy that made normal humans uncomfortable. Warning signs in 17 languages covered every surface, but the most prominent simply read, "Authorized personnel only, lethal force authorized." Captain Lee Jun-ho emerged from the transport tube first, his boots echoing against the metal deck, plating with mechanical precision. The left side of his face bore scars that formed intricate patterns, souvenirs from his encounter with a creature that existed partially in another dimension. His eyes, once brown, now held flecks of silver that seemed to move independently of his gaze. When he walked, shadows followed him a fraction of a second too late. Behind him came Lieutenant Park So-jin, her small frame deceptive in its apparent fragility. Her personnel file was a maze of black ink and redacted information. Even her blood type was classified. What remained visible was a single notation that made hardened military officials pale. Survivor, Project Mindbridge. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to fight in spaces where up and down were merely suggestions. Sergeant Choi Da-un followed, her augmented arms clicking softly as synthetic muscles adjusted to the artificial gravity. Half her torso had been replaced with machinery after an incident involving hostile alien technology that had tried to convert her into something else entirely. The procedure should have killed her. Instead, it had given her the ability to interface directly with systems that drove normal humans insane. The others came in pairs, each more unsettling than the last. Corporal Kim Tae-hyun dragged his feet slightly, not from laziness but because he was constantly calculating the exact amount of force needed to shatter the deck beneath him. His bones had been replaced with a crystalline structure that made him nearly indestructible. But the process had also given him an intimate understanding of how everything around him could be broken. Private Nam Jiwoo's eyes were completely black, having been replaced with sensors that could perceive 17 different spectrums of light. She saw the world in ways that would have driven philosophers mad with wonder and terror. Her partner, Private Song Min-soo, kept his hands in specially designed gloves that prevented him from accidentally dissolving whatever he touched. His fingertips secreted a substance that existed in a state somewhere between matter and energy. The twins, Corporals Han Ye-jin and Han Ye-jun, walked in perfect synchronization despite having been separated at birth and raised on different planets. They had found each other during a classified operation involving entities that communicated through quantum entanglement. Now they shared thoughts across any distance, their minds permanently linked in ways that violated several laws of physics. Specialist. Kang Hyun-woo looked the most normal of the group, which made him the most dangerous. His psychological profile was a masterpiece of controlled insanity. He had volunteered for experiments designed to map the boundaries of human consciousness, allowing researchers to study what happened when a mind was pushed beyond all reasonable limits. He had returned from those experiments changed but functional, capable of thinking in patterns that hurt to contemplate. The final members were Technical Sergeant Lee So-young, whose nervous system had been rewired to process information at superhuman speeds, and Master Sergeant Park Dong-hyun, who had survived direct exposure to a substance that existed in negative space. His body temperature was permanently 5 degrees below what should have been lethal, and sometimes he forgot to breathe. For hours at a time, the stealth corvette Black Mirror waited for them like a predator, carved from shadow and metal. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its design incorporated principles that regular shipbuilders refused to work with. The vessel had been constructed specifically for operations that couldn't officially exist, equipped with weapon systems that violated several interstellar treaties. "Crew manifest is complete," announced the ship's artificial intelligence, its voice carefully modulated to sound as emotionless as possible. The AI itself was a classified project built from the neural patterns of volunteers who had chosen to have their consciousness digitized rather than face court-martial for war crimes. All psychological dampeners are active. Neural inhibitors are functioning at optimal parameters. Sanity anchors are online and stable. Dr. Yoon Min-ho observed the loading process from behind reinforced transparent aluminum that could stop armor-piercing rounds. His own clearance level was so high that his existence was known to fewer than 50 people in the entire human government. He had volunteered to oversee this project after losing his entire research team to an entity that had somehow learned to exist in the spaces between thoughts. "Fascinating specimens," he murmured to his assistant, who was connected to the observation deck through a secure video link from another facility entirely. Each one represents humanity's refusal to accept limitations. Where other species would have died or gone mad, they adapted. The loading process continued with mechanical efficiency, familiar to career soldiers. Each team member carried equipment that looked deceptively standard, but incorporated technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Their weapons could fire ammunition that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their armor was woven from materials that had been harvested from the event horizons of black holes. "Captain Lee," Dr. Yoon activated the intercom system, his voice carrying clearly into the ship's loading bay. "Your mission parameters are refreshingly simple. Locate and eliminate all devourer entities by any means necessary. Rules of engagement have been suspended for this operation." Lee's response was barely above a whisper, but the ship's enhanced audio systems captured every syllable. "Understood, Doctor. We'll bring back their heads as proof of elimination." Dr. Yoon paused, consulting his tablet where classified reports detailed what little was known about the devourers. "Captain, preliminary analysis suggests these entities may not possess conventional anatomy. They might not have heads in any sense we would recognize." Lee's smile was visible even through the reinforced glass, sharp and predatory like a blade made of human determination. "Then we'll improvise, Doctor. Humans are good at that." As the Black Mirror sealed its airlocks and began its departure sequence, Dr. Yoon made a final note in his classified log. 12 volunteers departing for probable death or worse. Expected survival rate, 0%. Expected mission success. Rate? Somehow inexplicably 100%. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our refusal to know when we're beaten. The ship vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying its cargo of necessary monsters toward a confrontation that would determine whether reality itself would survive the next few days. The Black Mirror's engines wound down to an eerie silence. As it dropped out of hyperspace, the familiar blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel collapsing behind them. What greeted the crew wasn't the normal darkness of space dotted with distant stars, but something far more disturbing. The viewport showed a scene that made veteran soldiers pause and stare in bewilderment. The Kepler 442 system had been transformed into a nightmare that defied every law of physics humanity had discovered. Where the gas giant Kepler 442b should have been orbiting peacefully, a massive geometric shape twisted through space, its surfaces folding inward and outward simultaneously. The shape seemed to be a sphere, a cube, and something with far too many sides all at the same time, switching between forms faster than the human eye could track. "Sweet mother of chaos," whispered Corporal Kim Tae-hyun from his position at the weapons console. "What am I even looking at?" The system's star pulsed with an irregular rhythm that hurt to observe directly. One moment it blazed with the fury of a supernova. The next it appeared as cold and dead as a chunk of frozen rock. Sometimes it seemed to exist in multiple locations at once, casting shadows that pointed in directions that didn't exist. Sergeant Choi Da-eun's augmented fingers danced across her control panel, her cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the ship's sensor array. The data streaming across her screens would have driven a normal person mad within seconds. Numbers appeared and disappeared, measurements that read positive and negative infinity simultaneously, coordinates that placed objects in the same location while being light years apart. "Sensors are completely scrambled," she reported, her synthetic vocal cords maintaining their calm tone, even as sweat beaded on her forehead. "Either our equipment is having a complete breakdown, or we're looking at space where the basic rules don't apply anymore." Captain Lee moved to stand behind her chair, his scarred face reflecting the chaotic light from the displays. His silver-flecked eyes tracked the impossible readings with an ease that would have terrified most observers. "What's your professional assessment, Sergeant?" "Reality is broken here, Captain. Not damaged, not altered. Fundamentally broken. It's like someone took the universe's instruction manual and started erasing random pages." Through the reinforced viewports, they could see the remnants of the Zephyrian Third Fleet, scattered throughout the system like toys discarded by a petulant child. The massive dreadnought that had once been the pride of an entire civilization now existed as a twisted sculpture of metal and energy that folded through dimensions no human ship was meant to navigate. Lieutenant Park So-jin approached the forward observation deck, her enhanced nervous system already beginning to process the visual paradoxes that surrounded them. Her classified neural modifications allowed her to perceive reality in ways that regular humans couldn't survive. As she watched, her eyes began to adapt, finding patterns in chaos that shouldn't exist. "There's a logic to this," she announced, quietly. "It's not random destruction. Something is rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in this region of space." Private Nam Ji-woo joined her at the viewport, her artificial eyes cycling through 17 different spectrum analyses. "I'm seeing energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. Whatever did this operates on principles we haven't discovered yet." The ship's AI chimed in with its deliberately emotionless voice. "Warning, proximity alert. Unknown entity approaching from bearing 27 Mark 4. Every crew member instantly shifted into combat readiness, hands moving to weapons and control, stations with practiced precision. But nothing could have prepared them for what emerged from the twisted space ahead of them. The Devourer appeared gradually, like a photograph developing in reverse. At first it seemed impossibly huge, larger than most moons, stretching across thousands of kilometers of space. Then perspective shifted, and it appeared to be no bigger than a person, close enough to touch the ship's hull. The entity existed in multiple sizes simultaneously, its form a writhing mass of angles that hurt to perceive directly. The ship's sanity protection systems activated immediately, overlaying false but comprehensible images over the true horror. To most of the crew, the Devourer now appeared as a massive jellyfish-like creature with far too many tentacles, but even the filtered image carried an wrongness that made their skin crawl. "Contact!" shouted Corporal Kim from the weapons station. "Target bearing down on our position. Distance is undefined. Size is also undefined. This is insane." Captain Lee's voice cut through the chaos with military precision. "Weapons hot. All stations report readiness." "Quantum torpedoes loaded with paradox charges," Kim reported. "Weapons system is online but complaining about the targeting solution." "Energy weapons charged and ready," added Technical Sergeant Lee So-Young. "Warning, targeting computers are having difficulty establishing a lock on something that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously." The Devourer seemed to notice their presence, turning its attention toward the black mirror with what might have been curiosity or hunger. When it moved, space itself rippled around it like water disturbed by a stone. The creature's approach defied every law of motion, arriving at multiple points along its path simultaneously. "Fire at will," Captain Lee commanded. The quantum torpedo, launched from their ship with a brilliant flash, its exotic matter warhead designed to exploit weaknesses in the fabric of reality itself. The weapon had been created specifically for enemies that existed outside normal physics, incorporating technology that most human scientists refused to work with. The torpedo struck the Devourer, and something unprecedented happened. Instead of passing harmlessly through like every weapon the Zephyrians had tried, the human weapon connected with solid impact. The entity convulsed, its impossible form writhing in what could only be described as pain. The Devourer's scream echoed across space in frequencies that shouldn't exist, a sound that bypassed the ears entirely and resonated in the quantum foam of reality itself. Several crew members felt the cry in their bones, their enhanced nervous systems registering pain that existed on levels beyond the physical. "Direct hit confirmed," Kim shouted with savage satisfaction. "Target is wounded but still active. Whatever that thing is, it can be hurt." Captain Lee's smile was sharp and predatory, the expression of a persistence hunter who had found his prey. Weakness. "Outstanding. If it can be hurt, it can be killed. All weapons, continuous fire. Let's see how many paradox charges it takes to put this thing down permanently." The Black Mirror opened fire with everything in its arsenal, turning the twisted space around them into a light show of exotic energies and impossible physics. For the first time in eons, one of the ancient horrors that had terrorized the galaxy discovered what it meant to be the hunted instead of the hunter. The twisted wreckage of what had once been the gas giant Kepler 422c stretched across space like a cosmic graveyard. Its core had been turned inside out, creating a maze of gravitational anomalies and pocket dimensions where the Devourers lurked. For 3 days, the Black Mirror had been hunting through this nightmare landscape, and both predator and prey had been learning from each encounter. Captain Lee stood on the bridge, studying holographic displays that showed impossible battle data. Enemy movement patterns that defied physics, weapon impacts that occurred before the triggers were pulled, casualties that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Any normal military computer would have crashed trying to process such contradictory information, but the Black Mirror's AI had been built from the minds of people who understood contradiction. 7 targets remaining in the debris field, reported Lieutenant Park So-Jin. Her consciousness now expanded to process information in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Her neural implants glowed faintly blue as they worked overtime to translate impossible mathematics into something resembling tactical data. They've spread out through the gravitational maze, using the twisted space-time as cover. Private Namji-Woo's artificial eyes tracked movement that shouldn't exist, following entities that moved through folded space like dolphins swimming through water. "They're adapting to our weapons, Captain. The last 3 we engaged took 30% longer to kill. They're learning to exist in states that make our paradox charges less effective." Sergeant Choi Dayun's cybernetic arms interfaced directly with the ship's navigation system, allowing her to pilot through space that folded back on itself. "They're also learning to predict our movements. That last one almost caught us in a reality trap. by anticipating where we would be in 6 different timeline branches. The ship shuddered as another devourer attempted to phase through their hull, its alien consciousness probing for weaknesses in both their shields and their sanity. The creature's touch left frost patterns on the interior walls that existed in negative temperature, cold beyond the point where atoms should stop moving. "They're getting smarter," observed Corporal Kim Tae-hyun from Weapons Control, "but so are we." His crystalline bone structure resonated with harmonics that disrupted the Devourer's dimensional phasing abilities. What should have killed him had instead made him into a living weapon against entities that existed partially outside reality. The quantum communicator crackled to life, Dr. Yoon's voice distorted by the impossible physics surrounding them. "Captain Lee, Terra Command is receiving increasingly concerned transmissions from the Galactic Council. They want detailed reports on your operational methods." Captain Lee's laugh was harsh and humorless. "Tell them exactly what we're doing, Doctor. We're fighting cosmic horrors by embracing the same madness that created them. The only difference is we remember who we used to be and why we chose to become what we are now." The twins, Corporals Han Ye-jin and Han Ye-jun, worked in perfect synchronization at their respective stations, their quantum-entangled minds sharing tactical data faster than light could travel. "Contact," they announced in unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. "Big one approaching from the planet's former core. This one feels different." Through the viewport, the crew watched as something emerged from the twisted remnants of the gas giant's interior. This devourer was ancient beyond measure, its form more stable and defined than the others they had encountered. Where the younger entities appeared chaotic and unpredictable, this one moved with purpose and intelligence that spoke of eons spent learning the secrets of reality itself. "Analysis complete," reported Technical Sergeant Lee So-young, her enhanced nervous system processing data at superhuman speeds. "This entity predates the others by millions of years. It's been watching our battles, studying not just our tactics, but our fundamental nature." The ancient devourer approached slowly, its presence warping space-time in ways that made the ship's instruments struggle to maintain coherent readings. When it finally spoke, its words bypassed sound entirely, resonating directly in the quantum foam that made up their enhanced neural structures. "Curious little predators." The entity's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You are not like the others who have challenged us. You taste of the void between stars, of the spaces where sanity fears to tread. You have made yourselves into something that exists between order and chaos." Private Song. Min-soo's hands tightened. On his weapon controls, the specially designed gloves preventing his dissolution, touch from eating through the ship's hull. "It's trying to get inside our heads, Captain. I can feel it probing at the edges of my consciousness." "Let it probe," Lee replied calmly. "We've got nothing to hide from creatures like this. We are exactly what we appear to be, the Devourers. Attention focused on them with laser-like intensity. You have willingly embraced transformation that should have destroyed your minds. You exist in states that violate the natural order, yet you retain your essential humanity. This is fascinating." "We do what needs to be done," Lieutenant Park responded, her voice steady despite the alien presence pressing against her thoughts. "Nothing more, nothing less." "Such potential," the entity continued, its form shifting to display hypnotic patterns that promised power beyond imagination. "You could transcend your limited existence. We could teach you to reshape reality according to your desires. You could become gods among your people, rulers of dimensions beyond counting." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems and the subtle crackling of twisted space-time outside their hull. The offer hung in the air like a poison that tempted even as it promised destruction. Private Nam Ji-woo raised her weapon, her finger steady on the trigger despite the cosmic forces swirling around them. "Thanks, but we're not interested in godhood. We've got work to do." The Devourer's response was a sound like reality tearing apart. Rage and disbelief combined into something that existed on frequencies no sane mind should perceive. "Then you will join the countless others who have opposed us. You will be unmade, so completely that even the memory of your existence will cease." "Bring it on," Captain Lee growled, his scarred face split by a feral grin. "We didn't come here to negotiate. We came here to finish a job. What followed was a battle that unfolded across multiple dimensions simultaneously, with weapons that fired causality itself and defenses that existed in negative probability. The Black Mirror danced through folded space while its crew fought, an enemy that predated their solar system, each side adapting and evolving with every exchange of fire. The dimensional breach opened like a wound in space itself, revealing the source of the galaxy's nightmare. The Black Mirror slipped through the tear in reality, using propulsion systems that shouldn't have been possible to build, its hull crackling with energy discharges that existed in colors the human eye had never evolved to see. What waited for? Them on the other side made even these hardened veterans pause in stunned silence. They had entered a pocket dimension that violated every natural law, a space where up and down were determined by thought rather than gravity, where time flowed, backward and forward simultaneously, creating loops that hurt to contemplate. At the center of this impossible realm hung something that defied description. The entity was simultaneously vast beyond measure and infinitesimally small, a writhing mass of cosmic horror that fed not on matter or energy, but on the very concept of existence itself. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the heartbeat of reality, each throb causing visible cracks to appear in the fabric of space-time. "Sensors are screaming," reported Sergeant Choi Da-un, her cybernetic implants sparking as they tried to process data that contradicted itself. "This thing is preparing to give birth to something. The energy readings are off every scale we have." Captain Lee approached the main viewport, his enhanced vision allowing him to perceive the true scope of the threat. Around the central entity, smaller creatures swirled in complex patterns, tending to their cosmic mother like antibodies protecting a diseased organ. But it was what grew within the central mass that made his blood run cold. "It's a reality virus," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the ship's straining systems. "Not just something that destroys matter and energy. This thing will unmake the very possibility of existence. When it's born, it won't just kill everything that is. It will ensure that nothing ever was." The ship's AI calculated their remaining time with mechanical precision. "Gestation will complete in 11 minutes 47 seconds. Recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance of approximately 17 billion light-years." "There is no safe distance from this," Lieutenant Park So-jin replied, her consciousness already expanding to process the implications of what they faced. "If this thing completes its development, there won't be a universe left to evacuate to." Through the twisted space around them, the team could see the scattered remains of countless civilizations that had discovered this pocket dimension over the millennia. Ships from species that had mastered space travel before Earth's sun had formed, reduced to geometric impossibilities that existed in states between matter and concept. The Devourers hadn't just been random destroyers, they had been gardeners, cultivating fear and despair across the galaxy to feed this ultimate abomination. 10 minutes remaining, announced Technical Sergeant Lee So-young, her enhanced nervous system processing the countdown with inhuman precision. "The birth process is accelerating. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide now." Private Nam Ji-woo's artificial eyes cycled through analysis modes, studying the entity's structure for any possible weakness. "Conventional weapons won't work. This thing exists in a state that makes our paradox charges look like firecrackers. We need something that operates on the same level it does." The twins, Corporals Han Ye-jin and Han Ye-jun, shared a look that communicated volumes through their quantum-entangled connection. "There is one way," they said in unison, their voices heavy with the weight of what they were suggesting. "But it requires all of us." Captain Lee understood immediately. They had all known this moment might come, had prepared for it during their transformation into humanity's necessary monsters. The only way to fight something that existed beyond normal reality was to join it in that realm, to become something equally cosmic in scope. "We'll have to link our minds completely," Lieutenant Park explained, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. "Pool all our accumulated exposure to eldritch forces, all our enhancements, all our accumulated madness. Create something that can meet this entity on its own terms." Sergeant Choi's cybernetic hands moved over her controls with practiced efficiency. I can establish the quantum entanglement matrix using the ship's core, but once we link at that level, there's no going back. We'll be changed permanently. 8 minutes, the AI announced with its characteristic lack of emotion. Master Sergeant Park Dong-hyun, whose body temperature existed below the threshold of life, stepped forward. We always knew this was a one-way mission. The question is whether we're willing to sacrifice our humanity to save everyone else's. Specialist Kang Hyun-woo, the man whose sanity had been carefully rebuilt from controlled madness, laughed with genuine humor. Sacrifice our humanity? We gave that up the moment we volunteered for the experiments that made us into what we are. What we're sacrificing now is the pretense that we're still the same species as the people we're protecting. For humanity, said Sergeant Choi, her mechanical fingers beginning the sequence that would link their minds across impossible distances. For the galaxy, added Private Nam, her weapon systems powering down as she prepared for a battle that would be fought, with consciousness rather than bullets. For those who never know our names, finished Captain Lee, his scarred face set in grim determination. The quantum entanglement matrix activated, and 12 human minds suddenly became something greater and more terrible than the sum of their parts. Their consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of individual identity, merging into a collective entity that could perceive reality from angles that had never been meant for mortal minds. The battle that followed existed outside normal concepts of time and space. It was fought with weapons made of pure thought, shields constructed from willpower, and tactics that rewrote the fundamental laws of physics with each exchange. The cosmic entity and the merged human consciousness clashed across dimensions that had no names, their conflict reshaping the pocket dimension with every moment. In the end, victory came not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the most fundamentally human trait of all, the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. The 12 minds, now merged into something that existed beyond normal humanity, made the ultimate choice. They sealed themselves and the cosmic horror into a null-space prison, a realm between dimensions where neither could ever escape. When the Black Mirror emerged from the pocket dimension 3 months later, it carried 12 beings who were no longer quite human but remained recognizably themselves. Their eyes held depths that reflected the spaces between stars. Their voices carried harmonics that existed in dimensions perpendicular to sound, and their presence made reality itself slightly more flexible in their vicinity. The Galactic Council offered them everything: medals forged from crystallized time, honors that would be remembered until the heat death of the universe, recognition that would elevate them to the status of living legends. The team declined it all with polite but firm refusal. Their only request was simple: to be left alone to patrol the dark spaces between civilized systems, watching for threats that required monsters to fight them. The galaxy's governments agreed, secretly relieved to have these necessary nightmares stationed as far from populated worlds as possible. Now, in the void between stars, 12 figures maintain their eternal vigil. They are humanity's gift to a galaxy that sleeps peacefully precisely because these willing nightmares stand guard over their dreams, ready to become whatever horrors are necessary to keep the universe safe from things that should never exist. The End.